All right, well, let's go ahead and get started today. Thank you so much for coming out to Local Lore. I might be a new face to some of you. My name is Susan Fletcher. I'm the Housel Director of the McCracken Research Library, and I've met a lot of you in the audience, and I'm looking forward to meeting more of you as time goes on. I know you're used to seeing Eric in seeing the event, but today is a special day, and we wanted to take the opportunity to acknowledge that according to our calculations, this is the 25th Local Lore program. Isn't that pretty great? So on this milestone occasion, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank Local Lore founder and sustainer, Bob Richard. Bob, thank you for your vision in creating Local Lore and for your years of hard work and creativity to bring stories of this region to life. For 25 programs, you've inspired us with your personal experience as a park ranger in Yellowstone, our local flora and fauna, and all kinds of other tales. We've recently learned about the ranch that Amelia Earhart intended to build, and last fall, we learned about the first chapter in the Coe family history, and we're looking forward to hearing the second chapter today. You've also invited a variety of your friends to join you for these programs, including our own Robin Cutter, who's sitting here in the front row, Fred Brish, and of course, Bob Coe today. So Bob, thank you for these programs that you've done. You've enriched our knowledge of this region, and in so doing, you've enriched our lives. We're so thankful for your time, energy, and talent, and we just wanted to say a big thank you for doing Local Lore. I'd also like to thank several other people who are involved in the series. To Eric Rossborough, our MC extraordinaire, you'll see him again at the end of the program taking questions. To Matt Frost, our digitization specialist who helps Bob with PowerPoints and who has also
and he needs help too.
Yeah, who has also been part of Local Lore as well. To Cassandra Day, the woman who took your registration when you walked in the door today. She checked your name off the list. To Sam Hanna of the Buffalo Bill Museum for his help with sound engineering. To our IT department consisting of Jeff Dunham, John Gallagher, and Eric Simpson for their help with IT. And to Jordan Davis on our facilities team for their help in setting up and all the other wonderful work that they do to make our museum operate in such a smooth and consistent way. And a final thank you to our security team as well. And thank you to all of you who have showed up to Local Lore and continue to support the program. We're so thankful for all of you. We have a full slate of Local Lore scheduled for 2025. The next program will take place on May 15th for National Historic Preservation Month. So we hope you join us again to hear about the lost buildings of Cody. Registration for that program will open soon, and we hope to announce the rest of our schedule pretty soon. A final few words. You hopefully all picked up a survey on the back table. If you would take a few minutes to fill out that survey, that would just really help us evaluate the program and would give us some good ideas going forward. And we'd also love to hear just some thank yous to Bob for his work in doing the program as well. So with that, I just have a thank you note to drop off to Bob here. And we will let these guys take it away. Thank you.
Bob's got this down. It's new to me, but yeah, I want to echo this. And Bob's been really instrumental in this whole history thing that several of us putting together here in Cody, and we got a lot of help in the local people here. But you just wouldn't believe Bob's interest in history in the Cody country. How many books, Bob?
Too many, about 30.
Yeah, he's got 30 books about local people in the Cody country and different facets of the Cody history. So that's really a tremendous thing. And before we get going here, I want to take a second to recognize Al. And I know it's kind of overdone and everything, but Al was really instrumental and real close with our family, as were his parents. And at Pahaska, Al bailed us out many times, including the fires of '88 and different political situations over the year. And Al was probably the biggest believer in Cody I've known, in the Washington scene forever. You want to say?
Just to add to that, growing up, I was about 6 years younger than Al and Pete. They were 13 months apart. And working with them as a altar boy in the church and other things, I learned all the wrong things along with the good things. And I wanted to tell one more gathering with Pete and Al, and I told Al when things went downhill that I could now tell all the stories that he wouldn't let me tell before. So maybe we'll work it in the next year or two, but we'll miss him, but I know he's happier where he is, and God bless him and his family. And let's get started, Robert.
Okay.
Oh,
So this is my father, Henry Coe, Henry Huddleston Rogers Coe. We called him Henry, and he came to Cody and with his father in 1910 or 11-ish, and or thereafter, I guess, because WR came out and bought the ranch from Buffalo Bill in 1910, we figure, and so by 1913, 1914, they had what they called Shoshone Ranch, which is Coe Lodge up on Carter Mountain. And the first lodge was built there, and the cottage and the helps quarters and whatnot. But so he started coming out here in 1911, and or thereafter, and you can see he took the Cody country pretty close. And we're not sure when he decided he wasn't going to go home, but we're pretty comfortable with the thought that after high school, or he went to Fay School and I think St. Paul's, but after that he pretty much wrote off his educational endeavors and came crosswise with his father. He entered into the Merchant Marine in World War II, and for a long time we thought this was a Merchant Marine picture, but Linda McCoy over here, who's done a lot of our research, we're pretty comfortable now that he was working as a fireman and later as a steward on steamers working out of New Orleans. And this picture, it evidently is from prior to his naval service. Here he is in 1934. He came back to Cody after the Merchant Marines and those things, and was around Cody here in the 30s. That's when the photographs start. He loved cars, and this is the 34 Plymouth, I think. And there's so many cars. I've tried to have all the dates in the presentation at the tip of my head, but anyway, this is one of many, and you'll see along the way there's a lot of cars involved in his life. He was, I lost my father when I was 11, and so I remember him, but I don't remember everything about him. And the one thing I do remember was when I took the dash apart on his XKE. That didn't go over very good. This is the cabin at Aspen Creek, and he owned that before the war. And after he came home from World War II in 45, he'd married my mother, and they subsequently bought Pahaska in 1946. I always thought this was Natalie Gertis, and but the boys have told me, the Boyds have told me that this is Dorothy, or Dot is what we called her, and Dorothy May. And she worked at Pahaska, as most of the kids did. And she had 5 boys, which you'll see here in a minute. This is DM and Natalie. And Natalie married Keith Gertis, who's you'll see here in a little bit. Go on.
these are half sisters, right?
Right, from the first marriage, and she died in childbirth. This is the Boyds, and 4 of the 5 boys. And We were a close family, and even though they lived in Georgia at the time, and the Gertises lived in Kentucky, we all kept pretty close, and they'd come out and visit in the summers. I went out and did the full experience at the camp in Georgia. They ran a kids camp. This is DM Dorothy May.
This is probably up in Pasadena.
Yeah, this is at Pahaska, and the question is, do they still run that camp? And actually, Adam does run Camp Merrimack, which is a youth camp in North Carolina. There's Keith with probably Annie. Annie, we call her Annie number 1 or 2 because my sister was Annie number 1. We have 3 Anns in the family, and so actually we have 4 now. 3 because Ann's gone. There's Don and Ruth and my grandmother on the left there, Effie Shaw. And these are Ruth's parents, Don's parents on the right at their wedding. There's Dad at Coe Lodge. And you can see this is in the 30s. And the Coe Lodge subsequently burned down in 1937 or 8, I believe. And WR promptly rebuilt it. This is family inside Coe Lodge. If you look at the tables, you can see the Molesworth scattered around there. My mother's on the bench next to my sister Ann and Hank. And then Uncle Bob's in the back row, my dad in the center, and my Uncle Bill on the right. And then Clover, Bill's wife, holding Hank. Well, that's my mother, and this is in planting fields when WR got a degree from the University of Wyoming. And WR was a very accomplished man, and he took it upon himself to try to preserve Americana of the West. And so he had a fabulous collection of lithographs and books that formed actually one of the nucleus of the new WR Museum. And then what do they call the Western Heritage still down there? Western Heritage?
American Heritage Center.
American Heritage Center. And most of his collections went there, and then the remainder of them went to Yale. And my cousin Mike Coe was a professor at Yale in archaeology.
The person on the right there was Lorna Simpson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Senator Simpson at the time, I'm sure.
Yes.
And so this is a charter member of the Cody Elks Lodge, and this was a big deal for Cody to have a big lodge like that built. And of course, it's still here today. And these are all the charter members that were that first year. Dad's in the back row, just underneath the sign on the right under the clock there. And there's a few other locals in there you might recognize.
Next.
If you remember any of the names for people like this, we'd really enjoy knowing who they are. That's part of what we're trying to do is we've got all these pictures. Bob's got 200,000 or 300,000. I've got over 100, and we have a lot of names that we're lacking. This is Dad out at the big trees and courting Mom at the time, and this is when he's a gunner in the Merchant Marine. We know he was overseas because I've got a picture of him in a hammock out on the Pacific Island with a bottle of beer.
Next.
And he told us about the being torpedoed, of course, and that was one of the stories I do remember. This is more of the big trees and the courting episodes. And so they subsequently got married and out there, and my sister Ann was born in 1945. This is kind of indicative of the family Christmas, and this is the Shaw Christmas. My mother is on the right, and my Uncle Dick is on the left, and then you have Chuck and Ruth in the bottom row there. This is my mother, one of her baby pictures. There she is in college, I believe. Another one. And she was really a striking woman, even at that age. I'm sure she was amazing with her charisma. Those that knew her, she had a lot of charisma and she had a lot of integrity, and she could figure out a way out of most any situation if you just give her a little rein. This is the Cody Clearinghouse girls, and they were in San Francisco, and they all got together and they decided they needed to do a war effort. And so their thing was Mom, of course, was in the newspaper business around Cody. And so they went out to San Francisco, rented an apartment, and formed a newspaper that they sent to all the troops all over the world. And they'd write stories on, you can kind of see the sheets there. They'd have 2 or 3 sheets and they'd mail them off to the soldiers that were like in Africa. And they'd get a little letter from home talking about what everybody's doing and how, like he's over at Pearl Harbor, and et cetera, you know, you can imagine. And people were disconnected. They had no idea there was no phones to talk about, you know, from Africa, you didn't call home.
Go back. Dorothy Taggart, your mom, and Ruth Taggart. And there was one other person that's not probably taking the picture. I'll think of her name, but go ahead.
This is kind of indicative of our Christmas, and this is at the Beck Avenue house. And we lived on Beck Avenue before a lot of you know my sister lived over in Circle Drive on 17th Street, and that's the house they had after the Beck Avenue house. And this Pahaska came into my dad's life about 1946, and he bought a half share from the people who owned it, and they operated it through the year, and by the end of the year, Dad decided that he had to buy them out and get rid of them. And they were drinking them out of house and home. And so anyway, my mother and father made it their lives from 1946 on. And it was a big part of all of our lives. Ann, Hank, and I all had that Pahaska experience, bussing tables, helping with trail rides, cleaning windshields on cars, and for tips, of course, you know. Here we are here we are. There's Hank and Ann and Mom at the Beck Avenue house. There's Ann and my mother. And she was very much a part of our lives. And but they'd turn around and they'd take cruises and be gone. And of course the kids were whisked off to boarding school, you know, and this is what was done in those times. And so Ann went to Dana Hall, Hank went to Lawrenceville, I went to Lawrenceville. Neither Hank or I worked out at Lawrenceville very well. We'll leave it at that. My sister Ann in the parade, and she had that red cowboy hat, I'm told, and it was kind of a staple. And
The red cowboy boots.
oh yeah, she had the full get up, and this is labeled Stampede Parade, but I suspect this is the night rodeo parade, and
That could very well be.
you know, and it's for those of you that weren't here, every night in Cody at about, what was it, 6:30, 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock, I guess it was, the riders would form up and ride down Main Street on the way to the rodeo grounds.
We didn't call it the night rodeo. We call it the Pup, P-U-P, rodeo, because it was the smaller rendition of the 4th of July.
Yeah.
And this probably is the Stampede Parade because this is taken during the day.
Yeah,
Not the
that's a good point.
We have to have back here to keep us on track.
Somebody has to do it.
Yeah, he rotates the pictures, but he also is the color man. Yeah. Here's Dad with the kids. This is up at Pahaska. We still have the couch, and the table was burned up in the fire at the big house up there in '86.
But you saved most of the rugs, didn't you?
Yeah, most of the rugs were saved. The firemen went in the bedroom window and brought them out. They were in a closet in there. They were smoke stained, but most of the rugs were saved. This is Mom in front of Pahaska. And there's Hank. And many of you remember Hank. And he was, like I say, he was cleaning windshields and helping gas cars. There's Ann, and I'm sure she was making a mischief of herself, but there she is again. You could tell that she just really embraced the whole thing, and she was quite the little horseback rider. And there's Dad, or there's Hank with his first haircut, Jack Magoon.
I have to admit that I too got my hair cut in that seat there. I always wanted to sit in that thing every time that I went into Jack Magoon's, but I got too big for it.
We know the date because of the calendar.
Yeah.
And this next picture here with Hank, he in the back there you can see that little camper cabin. Well, those were guest cabins at some point at Pahaska. We had a deal that came across, and Pahaska had 20 rooms, and several of them were in those little camper cabins like that. This is Shaw and Coe's and whatnot. If you cross the back there, there's the first one I'm not sure about. There's Uncle Dick and Aunt Rhoda, Uncle Chuck, my dad, and I think that's probably Natalie, but it could be Dorothy May. And then unseated, I know we have Chuck and Ernie and the Greg Shaw, and we got Hank and Ann, and I'm not sure on the other boy there. It could be one of them.
And your grandmother.
And then, yeah, Effie. We were a close family, and whenever we'd have dinners, like, for instance, Thanksgiving, poker game always broke out immediately after the dinner. And the kids were invited later on. I put this one in because I'm sure it's one of those poker games. And if you look around here, it's Bus Arnold on the left, Ruth Shaw, Kern, Bill Damaris. Bill was in my life all the way. And then my grandfather, Ernie Shaw, there, I think. And then my mother with the cigarette. And then Chuck Shaw over here on the right. And I'm not sure who's got their back to us. Probably Dick here right in front, I think, with the ears. There's Dad and passport photo. And so they'd go on cruises, and when they were gone on a cruise, I'd be with Grandma. And it was pretty darn good. There's Dad, and this is at Pahaska, and they're building the hill cabins. 1965, this is the year before we lost Dad. This is back at Coe Lodge, at Planting Fields, and WR is in the center, and Ann and Hank are there, and then Dad. And this is at some point when Mom came around, she mended the fence with WR. And WR just really thought Mom was a great choice, and they quickly became really good friends. Well, this helped Dad because he was on the outs with WR ever since he refused to go to college. And So, but you can see here that they were on the yearly get-together list at that point. W.R. died shortly before I was born in 1955. There I am, and
He's certainly the cutest of the three, isn't he?
yeah, I imagine Jack took that picture. This is at the ski run. They were having ski races that day, but you can see the old Sleeping Giant
Lodge.
base lodge there on the right, and Hank and Ann are in the picture. And I imagine it was rope toes in those days. It looks like they've got the heavy rope toe gloves on.
See those heavy mittens that they're wearing? You had to have covers over them so that you wouldn't pull your mittens apart on the rope toe when you grasped the rope.
You can see them on Ann's gloves there in the middle. There's a flap of leather hanging down there. That was for gripping that rope. They're just such a cute little guys.
This is over at the Circle Drive house, isn't it?
Yeah, that's across from the Mormon church on 17th Street. There we are, and that's Bill Coe. A lot of the people in Cody remember Bill Coe. He traveled all over towns greeting people and leaving little reminders. They weren't little at all. And grandmother and I can remember this day because she had that coat out and she got me in it, and immediately the sun came out. But this is when they were building the house over there. You can see the flower beds are all brand new, and this was somewhere around 1956 or 7. 57 or 8, excuse me. Same with this picture. We were out in Phoenix, Arizona at Camelback, and this was on the way home from Disneyland. And of course, I dressed the part, and we were really enjoyed Arizona, but we traveled by train everywhere. I can remember catching the train in, I guess it was Los Angeles or Anaheim, went all the way to Phoenix, and then we caught the train from Phoenix and went to Denver. And that was the way to go. Birthday party, and there again, names. I know who the little guy looking at the camera is right there. Behind me is Howie Coe. And then my cousin Mike Shaw is next to my mother. And from there on, we don't really know who the 3 kids are. Don't think it's Ernie, no. Oh, Annie wasn't born yet. This is,
That's a pretty big cake.
yeah.
Yeah, for just 3 people.
Yeah. Right, and you see the cigarettes probably displayed right at the dinner table. And, that's the way it was. And but there's the 2 gals that were most important in my life right there. My mother and my grandmother they were the mainstay, I guess, what made me what I am today. There he is. You got something to say?
No, I think, not me. There you go with a big fish.
Yeah, 1964 we went to, or 65, I guess. Dad always, he had lots of cars. Well, he wanted boats. He wanted to be on the water, and so we had a house that was on Isle of Bahia, right next to Harbor Beach in Fort Lauderdale, just down the road from Pier 66. And so we went fishing quite a bit. The first picture I had a barracuda, and then here we got a slew of dolphins. I was very seasick, and you can go on to the next one. So we had this boat, and it was a fishing boat with outriggers, and Dad knew I wasn't going to do well, and so he had friends there going fishing, and so 3 or 4 days in a row they took me out on the rough water, and I can tell you what seasick's all about, and but it cured me. About the 3rd day, they had to, I'm sure they drugged me to the boat, cause about the third day I started coming out from, down in the well, and the fourth day I was fine. To this day, I've got iron. I can do great. And only once in a while do I have any motion sickness. There's the boat, Sister Ann on the front. And we had these little boats, this Boston whaler here. Well, Dad told me, he says, you can take that boat out by yourself when you learn to start it by yourself. Well, I figured that out, and starts a lot easier when it's warm. There are Hank and Ann and I on the whaler. Even Hank could drive a boat. There's Uncle Bob at Coe Lodge, and when he entertained at Coe Lodge, he'd set up a little bar out there, and this was kind of a routine, but he loved to bring Cody people up to Coe Lodge and entertain them and mix them up. And so, a lot of times there'd be some interesting, nefarious people up there. Alice Hammond was kind of a regular entertainment.
Who's that?
She's a little local caller.
More than that, she ran for governor, got 2 votes, her vote and one other. Also showed up with her fur coat on and nothing else at the grocery store. And she'd hold it out wide for everybody to see, and they escorted her out of the grocery store too. I could tell you many stories, but not time today.
Yeah, Uncle Bob had a great sense of humor, and so he'd invite people from Cody who were very astute, and like Dick Frost, and he'd sit him right next to Alice, and of course Liv's there too, and it's like, oh boy, she'd flirt with anything,
Include a grizzly bear, but
yeah. Uncle Bob was he went in the diplomatic service and obviously flew all over the world, and but he was ambassador to Denmark. He was in London during the war, and was really involved with a lot of the post-war, positioning that went on. And he stayed in the diplomatic service until the 70s, I think, late 60s. There he is. This is labeled the Jackson trip. This is on Yellowstone Lake, I'm sure, and probably in Dad's boat. This is Aunt Natalie. And Aunt Natalie married a count from Italy in 1936, I think, and there's a film that we reviewed, and they were very fascist. I mean, the people that came to the wedding were very fascist, and the photo clip there was like pretty startling for us to see, and they're all parading in all their Italian military garb, and it was just it was strange to us because we never really saw that part of Natalie. And when they purged Mussolini and the rest of the fascists in Italy, they did not get Leonardo, and so her husband was spared, and evidently not quite close enough to the real problem. This is one of Dad's cars, and it's a Packard, and I think 34 is what I saw. But I put this in there. You see what's on the back of it? That was not for carrying luggage. And he always had a full service bar wherever he went. And I guarantee there was a cooler with ice in there. I guarantee there was rocks glasses in there. And there was guarantee there was at least a Four Roses, and probably with my mother around, there was a Cutty Sark or a J&B. This is Uncle Bob up on top of Dead Indian, and pretty sure that's Betty Moran. that's in his house out at Hope Sound. And a lot of the furniture and different things are still in the family. This is Uncle Bill, and at his house, I believe this one is up in New England, probably Long Island, I think. I was there at one point. There's pictures of the whole family on the deck of this house. At a family reunion that I remember. There we are at Coe Lodge. That gives you an idea of the view from Coe Lodge. It's the most spectacular view in the country. And it had this beautiful rock deck. You can see it there. And it was just a phenomenal thing. And anyway, it was left in the will, Uncle Bob's will, to the museum, and ended up in Roger Hollander's name. And Roger tore the deck off. And I don't know why. And it's really dull up there now without that deck.
Irma Lake behind them, best trout fishing in the world. And you didn't have to do but catch 2 or 3 5-pound rainbows. And wow, what a thrill that was. In the background is Rattlesnake Mountain in the distance.
There's Angela and I at Pahaska. I took over Pahaska in 1984. And the family, when I was about 20, excuse me, it was like 70 something. Anyway, they didn't think I was old enough to take over Pahaska, and so they sold it. I was heartbroken, and anyway, I got the opportunity in '84. I guess it was '83. Pacific Power called us up, called Hank up, and says, "Hey, we got a lineman headed to Pahaska to disconnect the power. Are you concerned about it?" And Hank sent me up, and we took over, I guess, that day. And the lodge was froze up. Everything was a mess. Go ahead. There's Angela and I at Pahaska. And she's really revitalized me at Pahaska. And I was burned out, and Angela and I have been together since '95. And I guess you could say I took to hunting too, and there's a lot of parts of my life that were fashioned after my father, and I think not only did I act like him and unruliness and everything else, but I liked hunting, I liked the outdoors, and I loved Cody country. My mother once was asked, "You lived in Cody your whole life?" "Not yet." And I was asked about my big Malamute. This is Starlee. She's 145 pounds. And she passed away when she was just about 9. And kind of a snowshoe buddy, but snowshoeing doesn't work real good with dogs because the snow's so deep and it's hard on them. And but we'd take her occasionally. You can see this snow, she'd walk right on top of it. This is at Crow Creek, and I snowshoe quite a bit still. Yeah, I did the Washington thing, and it's a defeating thing. I had a guy tell me one time, he said, "You go back there and you lobby in Washington, you spend 4 days or a week or however long it is and go home, and you don't know if you did any good." And you don't. But down the road, somehow you think back to that stuff, it was probably worth it. For one thing, them sons of bitches gotta hear what we think out here. That's Starlee and my '68 Charger. And some of my sons, pretty sure it's theirs, but it's still mine. There's my sons there, Rob and Hub. Rob's in the front row here. And they were quite cute as kids. They grew up.
They're still cute.
They've each one of them have turned into motorheads. You might have figured that, like I did with my father. Here they are again. There's Hub. And, so Hub took to rallying, and he he's on his way to a rally in this picture. And you'll see his car here in a minute. It's rallied up. This is his wife Francie, and they live here in Cody.
She works at the library.
Yeah. And Rob's fiance is in the front row here, Amy.
Don't we have a photograph of them?
I don't think
proposing.
do we? Good.
I hope so.
Here's Hubbard in his car, and as he's getting ready to go for the rally. Dad and Ann did incessant rallying, and you see when we get to some of Dad's pictures, the cars and stuff. Here's Rob and I up in the burn up in Crow Creek. Wapiti firemen. Rob and I are both firemen in Wapiti, and my family has a long history in fire. My brother Hank was chief here in Cody, and a fireman for 13, 14 years, I'm not sure. And then my sister Ann's husband, Jim Hayes, was also a chief in Cody. And then HR, who is, some of you know HR Coe here in Cody, he is chief right now. And I've been on Wapiti for 30-some years. There's Hank and in the parade and in Engine 4. You know, if you're working at Pahaska, you're going to have these moments. And, you know, I'm not sure the story here, but as I recall, the breakfast cook was sick. And somebody's got to do it. I used to do it. I haven't done it for a long time. Rob says they're always sick.
But you do a great job too.
Fortunately, it was something easy to cook.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my sister-in-law, Marty, she used to say, how hard can it be to find somebody to flip hamburgers? It's a little more difficult than that. Here they are.
There we are.
Yeah, who's that, Amy? Amy and Rob are getting married this summer in June, and here in Cody.
She said yes.
Yes, she did. This is the moment. And then, of course, I let the cat out of the bag. That was a great pleasure. This Sister Ann. And one thing about our family, it was very social. And we always were entertaining or being entertained or going out doing things. And we're all about our friends. And in the back there, you might see John Feely. Well, you know, if we had a friends event, we were probably there. There's Jim Hayes and Ann's husband. He's passed. And here's the Hayes family. And in the back row, you got Ann and Meg and Jay and Brittany and probably, yeah, it's pre-Camden. You got Colin down there on the left and Addison up there, and then Jim in the wheelchair. These guys, you know, they weren't necessarily very close for a long time, but in the last 30 years, they became very close. And in the last years of Hank's life, he spent almost every evening over at Ann's house, and they had a little Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune connection going.
Yes, he was there in the right-hand corner.
Yeah, see Al over there and Leighton Stewart. Yeah, yeah. And we're not sure who the girl is, but Hank was enjoying himself.
She's a campaign worker, obviously.
Yeah, it could be a granddaughter. That's who? Maddie, yeah. Yeah, I guess it's Maddie. I hadn't recognized that. We got a name. And I'm not sure where this is, but this is at the hospital, and Hank was in the hospital. Yeah, and it's Carrie and Marty and Carrie, and then HR and Bethany. And there's the fire chief. He's got a nice looking brown there. So this one is, like I said, Dad liked his cars, and it started early. And this was one of his first cars. And this is, we think it was in the parade. And some of you recognize the car. Pete and Melanie restored this automobile. And it's actually been in the parade a few times here in recent years. I think it has. And that's just my memory. I'm not sure how clear it is. But Gary Cooper is sitting. You got your pointer, Mac?
Pardon?
Got your pointer? Gary Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
Get on the stick over there. And then we're thinking that maybe Larry Laram's behind Gary Cooper in the back there.
No, not Larry Laram, Charles Belden.
Charles Belden. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's Charlie's hat.
This was what, about 1957?
No.
No?
No,
Well,
this
you
is
look
back in
at
the 30s.
Yeah, you look at the automobiles, they're
30s,
probably
okay.
30s.
Yep.
These are some of Dad's collection here, and parked out in front of Old Lodge at Pahaska. On the left, you got the Clappy, then you got the Veely, you got the Mercedes Super S, which is, that car is probably priceless today. I don't even know how much it's worth, millions. The Crow cart, the Jordan, the Pierce Arrow, and the Silver Ghost Rolls Royce. And these are pretty much the same vehicles. But he had 3 or 4 other ones, and there's Model A down there. You see right in front of the Pierce Arrow.
This is in the parking lot out in front of the house.
Yeah. No, this is out in the front of the house, and there's a big parking area there. It's before they paved it, and those rocks were great. I mean, we had rock fights with the kids across the street. Here we are getting ready for a parade, and it was a big wash up and get the cars running and make sure everything was ready to go. And there's Dad in his Veely with Lib.
They always rode together in the parade at the Veely.
They did. Although I've got a picture of them in the Mercedes too. And but yeah, they were a staple in the parade.
Henry's wearing a duster.
Yep. That's a 1910 Veely. This is pride and joy. And that's the one he crashed at the rodeo grounds. This is the Kissel. And some people might remember Sam Decker. He's driving. And it was called the Kissel car. It's a German car.
I got to ride in the parade one year on that right seat there on the bumper.
Uh-huh.
Thought that was pretty cool.
There's the Mercedes, and like I said, that car's, it's in the priceless category nowadays.
You still have it?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No,
Well, they sold them all, didn't they?
My mother and Hank took upon themselves to get them out of the family before I destroyed them, I think, but I'm not sure. I used to get, in the latter years, Dad died in 66, and I think the cars went in 73, but I was in charge of getting them ready for the parade and putting them in the parade every year. Now, that is perhaps the first electric car in Cody. It's a 1919 Detroit Electric. It ran on batteries. It had a battery charger that sat in the corner of the garage that had wires going to it this big and was this high. And it was not very functional, but it was a great little car. And the steering wheel on it was a post that laid down in front of you, and you steered it like this with a foot for the brake. And there's the cars in the parade. They were a staple in the parade for years and years and years. I don't think I missed a parade until 1974. I think I was in the parade every year. The Pahaska had the Indians had come over from the show wraps I think the Arapaho came over, and they would do campfires at Pahaska with a little show and whatnot. And then Dad was great friends with them, and they'd come over and be in the parade for the 4th. There's Dad with his. Oh yeah, that's Sam. You're right. I didn't see you over there.
Somebody's raising their hand.
Yeah, you got a question? Oh, yeah.
Karen,
that's Sam.
Karen Decker's back in the corner.
Yeah,
there.
and, but they did rallies together, and Sam was the navigator. And and Dad was the photographer. So anyway, this is the Jag up there. It's in Colorado, I'm sure, probably in the Tennessee or the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. That's one of the Packards. And you notice it's got something on the back of it.
This thing would seat 7 passengers.
Yeah, I looked this one up and I knew what it was, but I can't remember now. It might be a Packard too. Well, they did a certain amount of hunting, and where'd you get the willows? Is that on the label, Mac?
Yeah, it was on the label that you had.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it was the willows because it sure looks like a Cody crew. And Dad would do these goose hunts out in Canada, and they'd load up the car and with the Dr. Dakin and Bill and Bus Arnold and what others, and head up there for these big hunts every year. It's got, it's got the boot on the back, and he always had these big lights like that. And but the other thing he had was some air horns, and if you look at the front bumper, these air horns, if you were coming down the North Fork and you weren't getting along down the road, you'd probably get a dose of those air horns. He'd get right up behind you and lay on the horns and scare you off the road. And the air horns are still on one of the fire engines here in Cody, I think. This is the circus party, and in 1963, we had but Mom and Dad held a party at the house. Anybody and everybody in Cody that was anybody went, and you had to dress up as in costume. Well, you'll see not everybody dressed it, but some people really dressed up. Come on, and they had me all decked
who
out.
that is right there. That's yours truly, right here.
Yeah, they had me decked out pretty good. I was the greeting committee. And you can see not everybody was dressed up. And I'm not sure who the folks are in the picture. Of course, Mom and Dad on the outside. And some of you might, if you know anybody, let us know and we'll tag the pictures with the names. But a lot of people did dress up. And, that's Kay Decker in the middle. And you might remember Kay dressed like that, Karen. Yeah, and then the Ada Griever and Uncle Bob, and I tried to identify Harry's wife. That's the next one next to me in the cloud there, clown suit. But I thought I could just go online and see who it was. Harry had 4 wives at least. We're not sure. It could have been 6. Harry was on the left in this picture, and he's the one showing the skin. Harry Jackson, by the way, if you didn't recognize him.
He's the bearded lady.
Yeah. And then I think Bill Damaris there next to Bill Damaris next to Harry there. And then you can kind of see Hank in the back row and my mother. But it was quite an event, and the clock there we still have. It's at our house here in Cody. Anybody recognize Al?
And who's the young lady next to him?
That's Ann.
Good.
Yeah, and they always took the bull by the horn, if you will, because Al was always an enthusiastic participant of any of these events. There's Dad with Kay. Kay and Sam were perhaps Mom and Dad's best friends, and watched the SpaceX fly the other day. Well, Kay and Sam, we watched John Glenn fly together, and it was like 2 or 3 mornings of dry runs before they finally went at 5 in the morning. And anyway, I still watch it today. There's Al and Ann and me, Hank and my dad. It was festive, and that's Harry's wife, and I'm not sure, Sarah. That's who I thought it was, Sarah. And yeah, I'm not sure on the other two. Maybe on the right is Stott. I don't remember.
Buffalo Bill Dolly for sure.
Yeah, she's got the dolly set up on. And there we are this is Mom's stairwell in the big house there in front of the big picture windows. And I'm not sure who that is with Ann and I. You can see all the festive people were there. The girl in the turquoise dress that's Big Alice next to Al. And I don't really recognize anybody, but they're all there. Everybody in Cody was there, and they had the dance floor set up and a live band, and it was quite an event. Here we are at the opening of the Remington Studio collection here in the museum. And Uncle Bob and my dad and my mother were very instrumental in making that happen.
And then that's the bust of WR.
Yeah.
And where is that now? At the Cathcart building, good.
There's my mother, chairman of the board, and she proved to be a very adequate chairman.
Not just adequate, she was the best. She was a fundraiser. She communicated with everybody around the world and brought people here to help build a museum and build what we have today. She was quite a leader. Go ahead, Bob.
My mother was quite a leader of the family also. And she was very supportive of you as an individual. She was critical, but she expected you to live up to certain standards. And one of the things that she never quite got over with me, my birthday is the 21st of April. Well, some of you know I kind of have a birthday party here in town. A lot of people participate. And once in a while, birthdays happen on Easter. And so there was a couple Easter dinners that I wasn't able to attend. It was a big to-do because family, the one thing you did do was attend the holiday dinners they had. That was when the family got together. There she is, and Kurt Gowdy's doing the honors. And, you know, in Cody, sometimes it rained. And on the podium next to her is Bill Ruger and Pete Krindler. I think Al's over on the other side. You can't see him very good.
Yep, can't quite see his face, but that's Al.
Here she is doing her chairman of the board duties. And one thing Mom was really good about was smoothing over rifts between people. And when it came to sitting people at the patrons' ball or any of those events for these openings and everything, nobody got a seat until Mom approved the seating at the table. And it was just because of there's a lot of this stuff's very sensitive, and she was an expert at putting people together. And then, like Bob said, when people come to see the museum, she had a way of making them feel at home and then they'd go over to the house and they'd have cocktails and dinner, and then they'd have the 2 a.m. club. Well, the 2 a.m. club was where most of the things that got done over here at the museum started. And it was like the nucleus, or the where the eggs were laid. And there's George Nichols on the right, and my mother on the left. I'm not sure the lady in the middle, probably George's wife, I guess, but they were raising money for the Winchester Museum, and I think this was something to do with the fundraising. I hadn't put this picture in here because, for one, the gentleman holding the gun is Harrison Brewer. And some of you at the museum might remember Harrison because he was the one who restored the Wells Fargo stagecoach here, and a real close friend of the family's. You guys too, Karen, right? Yeah. And he was an old Cody hand, and he moved back east. And when I was at his house with the family, it was in New Jersey, right across the river from New York. And then this is at the same event, and Glenn Nielsen there, and I'm not sure who that's talking there, but it's probably somebody with Winchester. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention the gun. The gun hung over the fireplace, and it had a big plaque on the side of it, and then the plaque, it was engraved, "From your good friends at Winchester, for the hostess with the mostest." It was Mom's gun. I'm sure the museum has that still. And Kurt Gowdy and Bill Weiss. Bill Weiss was very instrumental here at the museum also. Bill Sr., my mother on the right. Here we are in Moscow, or Leningrad, I guess. No, this is Moscow. It's probably at the Hermitage. And the museum sent an art exhibit to Russia, an exchange exhibit. And there was like 35 of us that went. Mother insisted that I go. I was in college at Bozeman, and Hank and Jim and I were there, and the girls, Ann and Marty, were home pregnant. This, I'm not sure where it is.
I'm pretty sure it's at the high school in the gymnasium.
Yeah, it looks like it. And there's a picture of them outside you'll see here in a bit. This was in some sort of excursion train. As I recall, it came to Cody, but I don't have much more recollection. It was a museum function. Here we are outside of the gymnasium, and you know, I've been thinking back on this. I'm not at all sure this wasn't one of the first patrons' balls. I really don't know.
It's Pete Grindler there on the right.
Yeah, that's Pete, and I don't recognize anybody else, I don't think. Mother was very instrumental in the Plains Indian Museum, and she kind of took it under her wing. And remember, this was during the Wounded Knee time, and one of them, I guess. But anyway, there was a lot of sensitivity in the indigenous communities about, you know, the collections. And so the board was very concerned that, you know, that somebody would come in and try to harm the museum for the collections. And so when they were rebuilding the front portico, they were talking about putting bulletproof glass in the front of the museum here. And I think those ideas were dropped because, you know, it turned out that they were a lot more friendly than everybody was thinking. But Mom cut out this deal with the Indian community to have an advisory board for the Plains Indian Museum. This is the groundbreaking for the Indian Museum. And anyway, the Plains Indian Advisory Board was the first advisory board in the country set up to advise the curators how to operate the museums.
Two notable characters you can tell by the lack of hair, Al, and that's Jim Nielsen.
Yeah.
Jim right there. Looking over Jim's shoulder is E.J. Goppert.
Yeah.
Over here on the right edge of the is Buck Julian,
Uh-huh.
who was the contractor who built quite a bit of this building. Over here on the left, that's Freddie Garlow Jr., who is the grandson of Buffalo Bill, and then that's Lib Frost. I'm not sure if that's George Horse Capture or not, but
I'd say
yeah,
it
there's a lot of
probably
folks
is.
in the background there.
Well, all turned out for the up and up, and the museum, the Plains Indian Board right now is very strong and still very much populated by Plains Indians. I sit on the Plains Indian Board. This picture here is probably at one of the dedications. I'm not sure which one. Oh, this is a 1979. But not sure what they were doing. Is it the Plains Indian or? I think it was the Plains Indian. I see a Native American on the podium there. And, oh yeah, well with the Indian rep for sure. She developed lifelong friends with everybody on the board, especially Joe Medicine Crow. They were very close. Art and Arthur. You can see Al back there on the left, and my mother on the right. You know, I'm thinking that person next to my mother could have been Stan Hathaway.
I think it's Doris Miller.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he would have been mayor of Cody, so that's probably true. That's a good call. Always looking for names, and we have the names here. And
Most of them anyway.
yeah, you see General Doolittle, and he was in and out of my family's life. I'll just put it that way. I've seen pictures of him at Pahaska. John Wayne came to Cody and got off the plane and went immediately up to the Polson Ranch. And they developed lifelong friends, and then unfortunately Chuck Polson was killed in a hunting accident a few short years later, and then of course John died of, the Duke died of cancer, 4 or 5 years after that. But the Duke was at the house and had quite an entourage around him, and he showed up at the house. He showed up with these brown paper bags with these 4 bottles of tequila. And Commemorativo, the old bottles where they're embossed in the side of the bottle, and we all sat around with little short rocks glasses, drinking tequila straight up with the Duke. And I look around Cody, and like John Feely was there, and Hank was there, I was there. There was all these people, and you know, we all knew it was 1976, and so, you know, John Wayne's at the house at the big party, and here comes the Marine marching band up the driveway playing. Marched through the party and everything, and then joined the party. We had a heck of a deal going.
I added this picture. We mentioned in that last slide that there was this bell ringing ceremony. This was, of course, the bicentennial, 1976. That's Mary Lou Whitney, the wife of Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney, who basically paid for the establishment of the Whitney Museum of Western Art. And that bell that they're ringing together is made from some of the scrapings off of the original Liberty Bell, the leftover pieces of metal from the casting of the Liberty Bell. And they cast these 4 Liberty Bell replicas, and they were all rung at the same moment across the United States. One in Washington, D.C., one in St. Louis, one here in Cody, and one in, I think, in San Francisco. And ours rang it at 12 noon. And so the 2 of them rang it together. And that's what that whole thing was about. But this was also during the celebration in which they announced the acquisition of the Winchester collection.
That's a good story, Mac. I didn't know that one.
And this is the dedication of the Winchester collection in 1980. That's when it first went on display in the south end of the Buffalo Bill Museum.
I can truthfully say I don't recognize anybody there.
I do. Over here, the third guy on the left is Bill Talley, who was the marketing director for Winchester. Sitting next to him is Harold McCracken. The lady with the pearls is Peg Shreve. I'm not sure who this is next to her, but the guy here on the end is Dick Cheney. And here's another famous picture.
Yeah, and this is my picture. The Mac has one with names here, and but it's a dynamic group. These are the ones that got it done, and this is the core group that really made the museum what it is today, in my mind.
But the leader and the leadership came from Bob's mother, Peg Coe. And she made all this happen, found the people, and got them on boards, and they became a central part of building this whole complex.
Yeah, this is the board of directors, of course, but there's some pretty key people here that were important on this whole thing. Harold McCracken, this is right, I'm sure it's right before he passed. And but Harold was really instrumental in the whole bringing this museum down the path.
The names all the way across. Of course, you see Big Al there in the back, and Dr. Dominic. It's who's who.
Bill Weiss on the lower right there. He was he eventually moved on to Jackson, I guess. And, but he was big in those days. Every one of these people were great. Go ahead.
And we got Milward Simpson down here in the pink jacket. Next to him is my uncle, Dick Frost, who was the curator of the Buffalo Bill Museum at the time. And this is Mel McGee. Down here in the front row, Freddie Garlow, Jim Nielsen, Don Hedgepeth, and Bill Weiss Jr. So yeah, it was a pretty neat time. Whoops.
Well, and this is Mother at the house greeting people coming over for one of the 2 a.m. clubs, probably.
Next.
Dr. Dominic. And I remember him in the same pose, only he had a big old hypodermic with penicillin in it. There he is, one of my heroes, Matt Dillon. Well, Jim Arnaz. There's my other hero. And John Wayne was just the nicest guy you ever met. And genuine and just a real person. Real pleasure to meet him.
And this is just after the movie The Shootist had come out, which was his last movie, by the way. And he was still sporting that mustache, the little tiny goatee beard down on his chin. And he was wearing that humongous 30-gallon hat that he wore in the movie. But he never made another movie after that.
Slim Pickens. Slim was another really great guy. And, you know, Mom, she could deal with these people. There was Glenn Ford and Robert Fuller, and she didn't care for a lot of them. But the ones that she really liked, you can see here that Slim was just a great guy.
Slim was also hired as quite a spokesman for Winchester, as was John Wayne at one time. But Slim did an awful lot more.
Mother hosted the Livery Johnson deal with Robert Redford, and he came over for lunch. And that was the last time he was at the house. Just saying. Well, this speaks for itself, but this is the Patrons Ball, of course, and pretty sure that the Patrons Ball came out of the 2 a.m. club.
More than likely.
Yeah, Bill Ruger there in that picture. And this here is, you can see, this is her table. And you can see Hank on the right there, and I don't know who that next guy is. And, Marty. And I think that's John Sinai in the back, which was a lifelong good friend of hers. Uncle Bob on the left, my first wife, Gwen. Bill Damaris, and is that Charlie Duncan? Who is that on the end of the table there? I should know. I don't do well with names. That's why I'm in the history section. Dot Morris, Dot and Leonard Morris were real close with the family. And this was kind of how the 2 a.m. club went. Is, you know, just one or two people with my mother, they'd sit down and brainstorm. And she's looking up, she had a fabulous library. Dad read everything all the time and had all sorts of books.
As you can see.
There's this place. She's in the position. There was a lot of parts of my life that Bill Damaris was in. And Bill Damaris, of course, Damaris Springs here in Cody. And there's a lot of speculation over the years about whether Bill's mother, Nellie, had a deal with Buffalo Bill or not. Who knows? There he is again. And in his final years, he stayed at the house there at Cody where Mom's help could look after him. And there they are at Aspen Creek. This would be immediately after the war.
Ouch. Sorry about that. And with that, we are finished.
Come on. Thanks everybody for coming. And I appreciate I never would have done this without Bob holding a sword to my back all the time.
We've met about every 2 weeks for the last couple of years. I've learned more about what his mother and his family, and it's now going to be part of the archives. But thank you, Bob.
Well,
Any questions for Bob or Bob?
one of my hobbies is the photos and trying to scan them and get them back to where we know who's in them. And so it's an appeal for you guys to put some names to some pictures. And so when this thing comes out on YouTube, you just take a picture of the picture or whatever and put a name to it and drop it to Bob or I or Linda or even Robin. Probably we'd get it done. There you go.
I just also wanted to thank both Robin Cutter and Linda McCoy for the work and the research that they've done. Thank you again. And we're going to keep them working on other research, trust me. Bob and I are going to work on trying to do a history and a local lore, probably on the Irma and the history of the Irma. I think we'd all be interested in that. But we'll have some others, and then this summer I'll be back in July to do the Frost and Richard family with Mac Frost. Or if I get too old, Mac will have to do it, and he'll do a good job. Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure you mentioned the Irma.
I just did.
Twice.
We weren't listening to
Valley Ranch is one of the ones we're looking at. The Irma, the hospital. We've got a few that are kind of on the burner, if you will.
Thank you very much. If you took a survey or a clipboard, could you please leave them on the table on your way out? And we'll see you in July. Have a great day.
Thank you.